All right, this is Infosec Decoded number 76, CityCoin. And we're starting with Kaitlyn, who has the Edge browser.
Yes. So there's a blog called Control Blog by Daniel Alexanderson. I love that name. And basically what this goes over is the fact that the newest versions of Windows 11 builds 22.483 and 22.494 apparently changed the way that the operating system handles open links. In particular, competitors can no longer open links. So if you install Chrome or Firefox, and there's some sort of link in a desktop application, Windows will block those from opening those links, which seems a bit back to Microsoft old practices. You know, it used to be Microsoft had a really bad reputation for abusing its monopoly, and Microsoft went out of its way to, rebrand itself a bit, change the way it does things.
They were forced to.
Yeah, they were forced to. Yeah, they were absolutely forced to. And it seems that Microsoft's backsliding a little bit. And yeah, unfortunately. So we'll see what comes of this. I mean, I assume Microsoft is going to say it's a security thing, but there's,
already been busted for this 20 years ago. And the court order resolved, they were forcibly ordered to make it easy in control panel to switch the default browser to something else. And now they've taken that off. So I wonder if that court order has expired or if they've just figured out what a lot of people have figured out, which is that law doesn't matter anymore and you can just break it with impunity.
Right. I mean, the other thing too is the way that Microsoft handles it is that they automatically sort of put Edge, or yeah, I guess it's Edge now. They put Edge as the default browser. And if you want to change it, they kind of are like, are you sure you want to change it? Maybe you want to go back. Oh, by the way, there was an update. We'll change it back to Edge for you.
Oh, and you have to change it 3 places. And then they say it will just come back and remove the shortcuts to the other browsers from the taskbar and everything because, oh, you don't mean that. That stuff is just junk.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what they did.
It's like a Monty Python sketch.
Well, you remember, it reminds me of when Windows 10 first came out. You would have Windows 7, and this box would pop up saying, do you want Windows 10? And whether you click yes or no, it would just put Windows 10 on. Yeah. They did that for 2 people said, dude, you're supposed to have higher standards than that. You're not supposed to just admit that you're openly malware like that. And so they kind of knocked it off. But I assume they'll knock this off too. I mean, I hope so. I mean, this is over the line.
Yeah, I like the part at the end because this is a blog, and so it's purely an opinion piece. The author says Microsoft still charges $200 for a Windows license while simultaneously filling the operating system with ads and this is the author's words, crapware. Weeks before launch, Windows 11 wouldn't even show the taskbar when it failed to display an advertisement dialog. Just last week, first-party apps and features of Windows 11 stopped working due to an expired encryption certificate, which we went over in the news. So
yes, I still need to look into that because if they actually have any kind of signature enforcement anywhere, that's a new thing and interesting.
Yes, but yeah, it's
yeah. Well, that's Microsoft being Microsoft. So Irvin's got the 25 days of Christmas.
Yes, I know we're a week or so away from Thanksgiving, but TryHackMe is once again going to do their 25 days of Christmas. This is great for anybody who wants to get into our field and wants to do some hands-on stuff. These things have been great. The last couple of years have been awesome. They're very baby mode, so it's not difficult.
Are they free?
I think so. I think their Advents of Cybers have been free so far.
That's good. The one I always see is the Sans Holiday Hack Challenge, and I never get very interested in it. It seems to involve a lot of wandering around.
But that's what you like. You like wandering off and getting into trouble.
Well, somehow I never get into the Sans Holiday Hack Challenge.
Oh, I love those.
Okay.
I love KringoCon.
They're very popular. Yeah, I always lose interest. Anyway, this might be better.
Yes. Yeah. For new people, definitely the TryHackMe one I would recommend. For us who've been at it for a while, the Sans KringoCon would be better, but both are always great.
Okay, good. Absolutely. It's definitely real good for students to do CTFs of all kinds. And the beginning ones are best because most CTFs are just too hard.
Yep.
Yeah, good. Right, Alan has got, oh yeah, the vulnerability that they held on to for a year. Are you there, Alan? Ah,
Now I'm here.
okay.
Yes. There's a serious vulnerability in Palo Alto networks devices. It's CVE 2021-3064. And there have been plenty of Palo Alto vulnerabilities over the years. So that in and of itself is nothing particularly interesting. What is interesting about this one, however, is that this vulnerability, this major 0 day, and it is a very serious 0 day, was discovered a year ago by the security company Randori. And rather than responsibly disclosing it to Palo Alto and getting it fixed, and thereby helping build their reputation, Randori's reputation, and helping Randori's customers, they instead held on to it for the past year and integrated this into their automated red teaming app or service.
Mhm.
And for who knows what reasons, I suppose to improve the performance of their service, their red team service, to make it look more impressive. And only now has this been publicly disclosed and has Palo Alto fixed it properly. But this affects tens of thousands of devices. There are conflicting estimates of just how many Palo Alto devices this affects, but anywhere between 10,000 and maybe some dozens of, or some several thousand, so several tens of thousands of Palo Alto devices. So it's a very significant and potentially devastating 0 day. But the real question here is, why did Randori decide to hold on to it for so long? And why aren't they getting called out more aggressively for having held on to it for a rather flimsy commercial reason of their own?
Well, I've seen everyone screaming and yelling about it on Twitter, and it seems to me like most of the heavy duty binary exploit development practitioners say this is fair game. You find a 0 day, you use it for a while, and you tell them later when you're ready to get around to it. And I must say, I haven't found anything this important, but I've learned the hard way, when you find something, nobody cares. Anyway, but other people are saying they should have dumped it right. They should have told them right away. I don't know. I think I'm sympathetic to them. I think that is kind of your red team service. And other people say, what good is a red team engagement that uses a 0 day? But I think the bad guys use 0 days, and you should have defense in depth to cope with it. And that's a fair thing to test. Like, suppose I took over your impenetrable firewall. Now what? Do you have something to detect and deal with that or not? Anyway.
Yes, but in this case, it's not much help to the customers, because the clients don't, the clients can't effectively prepare for a real incident.
Yes, they can. That's the whole point. This is the zero trust model. You say, you know, there are 0 days, you know, you can't patch them. Therefore, you have to say, what happens if I take over something on your network with an attack you can't stop? You should have a response. That's defense in depth.
Well, right, and I understand that, but there are so many hypothetical points of failure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and this could have been exploited in the wild too. This very easily could have been exploited in the wild, and it would have had devastating effects. So the
Well,
responsible things, if they were actually interested in helping their clients, would have been to disclose this to Palo Alto as soon as they discovered it.
that is the argument many people are making. I'm far from convinced, but
I'm sure it was profit based.
of course it's profit based, but they put a lot of work into finding the 0 day. Why shouldn't they make some money from that? And if it gets exploited in the wild, then somebody else will notice and patch it. I don't know. It's I don't see this absolute moral duty to report it right away. I remember when some came up years ago, they were talking about how the NSA should just hoard them and use them, and they did that, but then they lost them. Now, if somebody was to steal it from you, then you might say you're responsible for the attacks that come. But I don't know. Anyway, it certainly is given people a chance to rehash all the old arguments about full disclosure. This is a battle we've been having for 30 years, and I guess it's not going to get resolved anytime soon. Anyway, then I got CityCoins. So I heard about New York City. New York City is going to have a coin, and the profits are going to go back to the city. And apparently that's supposedly happening to Miami coin. They say the Miami coin is selling a cryptocurrency, and it is supposed to make so much money for Miami that it will be 20% of the entire city budget. And I looked into this. I'm thinking, well, this is like an NFT, right? You're creating on the fact that you're famous, and then people buy a coin, and then it generates money for the city. San Francisco should have one, I guess, unless it's all just a scam, which is most cryptocurrency things are. But anyway, it's also interesting technically. I looked at CityCoin. CityCoins run on the Bitcoin blockchain. They are smart contracts that run on Bitcoin by having a second chain and a second coin connected to it. So it's pretty interesting. And I'm going to be looking into it to understand the technical details of it. And maybe it's a good thing for San Francisco to do it and get some money. But I remember 25, 30 years ago when they passed the lottery, they said the lottery was going to give money to the high schools, but then it turned out that the lottery people just stole all the money and the schools didn't get any money. So I kind of suspect that might be what happens here too. But we will see. New York City is already in and Miami's in. And I don't know why San Francisco hasn't jumped in yet. Seems like we ought to be jumping into anything like this. Anyway, and back to Kaitlyn about misinformation.
Yes, as many people in our audience may be aware, misinformation is really plaguing our society at the moment.
Except on this podcast where everything is 100% true.
Yes, absolutely. Where my last story came straight from a random person's blog, which so it's true.
There you go.
Yes. Anyway, so right. There's a story on the Hill by Jim Fournier, an opinion contributor, talking about how algorithms are what's causing a lot of the misinformation in our society at the moment, a lot of the conspiracy theories. And we've gone over this before in the podcast where we talked about how these algorithms sort of dish out content you want to see. So if you're inclined for conspiracy theories, inclined to believe conspiracy theories, now in a healthy environment, there would probably be some checks and balances saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't be seeing this thing about how 9/11 was an inside job or that there are moon bases spying on people or something like that.
Like the comic book code.
Right, like the comic book code.
Yeah.
There should be some sort of, responsibility there, making sure that what people see is somewhat factual. But of course, that's not the goal of social media companies. The goal of social media companies is to make the money. And in order to make the money, they will show you what they think you want to see, and they have algorithms inclined to do that. And the algorithms have no idea what the content of the article actually is, whether it is actual disinformation, whether it's written by North Koreans to instill political strife in America, whether it was designed to be satire. It doesn't know. It just sort of puts the pieces together and says, this is what you probably want to see. Well, the article talks about something very interesting, like how do we fix this? And the article talks about, where was it in the article? Oh, here we go. So let me put this paragraph. It says, people need to be able to look at content to see where it came from and how it traveled to reach you. This is called data provenance, the ability to see and verify the path that it took in a clear, traceable manner to establish reality from reputable human sources. And I agree. One of the issues is that there is a lack of media literacy in the public at large. And I don't really blame the public for this. Being media literate is very hard. You have to know how media is constructed, who's doing it, why they're doing it. Why does CNN have articles about, climate change? What do they get out of it? Why are they, can this be trusted? And those are really difficult things to answer. And by the way, by and large, yes, you can trust CNN for climate change news, but the fact is that they're putting it out there because a reporter was paid and people want to get the sort of factual news from CNN. But having that sort of understanding of the industry, it's not easy. If you do not grow up around this stuff, you don't know how the news gets there. one of the things that really shocked me is I tried to teach media literacy to kids. And I thought that, the kids are going to have a tough time, but not going to have that tough of a time. But I decided to make it really easy for them. So I showed them a website of like people claiming that the earth was flat. And I asked the kids, here's a web page saying that the earth is flat. Is this trustworthy? Do you believe that the author is telling you the truth? And all the kids raised their hands. Yes, they're telling the truth because an adult said so. And that's kind of how a lot of people view the news. It's that you have the adults in the nice outfits in the what looks like to be a reputable news source telling us things. It has to be true.
Mhm.
Well, that's not really the case. And so having this provenance, this data provenance, showing where things come from and why is a really good idea. I don't know how to implement it, but it's something to think about and make it very accessible. The other thing that I would like to, the author recommends is sort of a new type of platform, but instead of making it like Facebook and Instagram where everyone's sort of posting to each other, focus newer social medias in a style similar to Reddit, where you have sort of moderators and groups that sort of weed out things that aren't relevant to the group's interests. So,
Well, I mean, it sounds good, but I think it's going to fail on the same rock that everything fails on, is that we have a gigantic split in America. And there's like 40% of America that do not agree, don't believe in science, don't believe in medicine, don't believe in authority. They would flag things that are true that the rest of us would say are false.
right, which is why the article was actually very clear about at the moment. We don't leave it up to the masses to decide what is true, what is not true.
So
it's sort of a step backwards, saying, okay, we need to define some experts in fields.
Okay, so
this sounds communist.
No, this means that you're a left-wing fanatic and you're suppressing the right-wing voices, just like they say. Just because they're lying, you're suppressing them.
At this point, I would like to point out that there's plenty of misinformation on the left as well as the right. It is not necessarily
comparable at all, I think.
Well, yeah, but I've met my fair share of anti-vaccine lefters. I mean, come on.
Yeah, there is, but I think it's about 10% of what's on the right lately.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to deny that the right at the moment seems to have an issue, but both sides, this is not necessarily a right versus left thing. Both sides really need to be scrutinous of their views and engage in media awareness and media literacy. So.
And I mean, there are times when the left is the political problem, like in Central America, and they're the ones that want to destroy the government and end it and make it a dictatorship. It just happens to be the right doing it in America lately.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, but that's why I think this is the huge problem. This is why, Trump wants to make his own right-wing media where that kind of information will be furthered. We'll see if he can actually do it. His ability to do the technical stuff and to organize team is pretty weak, but that's the idea. He'll make a right-wing Twitter.
Right. And also in that same vein of media literacy, it's really important to ask ourselves, why is it so important for Trump to invest so much time and energy into creating a social media platform? Like, is he just kind-hearted and wants to make the world a better place through social media, or does he gain something from a social media platform that does not question, or fight back against misinformation?
I mean, that's what he said, that he never would have been president except for Twitter. And of course, from his point of view, he is saving America, making it better, and heroically a good guy, and you're just helping him in his noble quest to make the world better.
I'm sure every politician says the same thing.
Everybody's the hero of their own story. Yeah.
Yep.
But 40% of Americans are kind of behind him on that. Anyway, Irvin has got Wireshark fixing one of their problems.
This is rather earth-shattering for everybody who teaches Wireshark. Forever and a day, it's been taught that you never do something like IP.address not equal whatever, because it doesn't work the way you intend. What if you do something like that, where it's IP.address not equal whatever, then the filter will take out all packets that have that IP address in either the source or destination.
And that's not what you want.
And that's not what you want, because maybe you want to block one or the other. It blocks both, because
Well,
it's an or statement, basically.
You could do IP.source not equal, right?
Right, but if you're trying to filter starting broad and work your way down, and that's just one example. The not equal just applies in any situation where it's an or, basically an or statement.
Mhm.
So you never get what you're looking for. So everybody's been always taught to put the exclamation point at the beginning of the phrase rather than making it not equal,
Right.
in order to get the desired effect. Well, 2 weeks ago, there's a commit that is going to show up in the right now. It shows up in the release candidate for the next version of Wireshark, but it's going to end up in the next update, where not equal finally will work the way it's intended.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so finally, Laura mentioned that this issue has existed since its very first days.
Yes, I think I remember seeing it in Ethereum
Yes,
15 years ago. Yeah.
yes, that has been there since then, and they are finally going to fix it. So that means we all have to change that portion of our class to not do that anymore.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah. I remember when Microsoft first brought out Windows Defender, some of the antivirus companies are actually going to sue them for making their product obsolete by fixing their thing, so people do fix things now and then.
Yeah. So this is one of those big fixes that everybody now has to be retrained to be okay with doing something like IP address not equal whatever.
Okay. Yep. And so Alan's got something about an Iranian threat actor.
Yes, this is more of a footnote than a major story, but the FBI is now warning American organizations that an Iranian threat actor, in other words, likely some Iranian military or intelligence organization, is going around trying to acquire data that's been leaked on US organizations. Unfortunately, there isn't much information on exactly what the FBI knows and what exactly this Iranian threat actor is doing. But it does appear that they're approaching this more systematically, perhaps, than they have done in the past. Of course, the motivations are unclear also, but they do have a certain set of TTPs, threats, or tactics, techniques, and procedures that they're using to go about this. And a lot of it involves RDP and automated tools for, first of all, attacking vulnerable WordPress sites, and then performing scans to find various vulnerabilities that they then automatically exploit.
Yeah, I noticed, probably not coincidentally, that almost all these attacks would be fixed if you made the improvements that Biden said all the government facilities have to do within the next 60 days. Like patched, like the top 100 CVEs, that would stop most of this.
Probably, yes.
Yeah. Well, we should be doing that anyway. These all look like things your company should be preventing, like brute forcing RDP and all that jazz.
Yes.
It's a pretty good, top 10 list of things you ought to fix.
Right.
Good. All right. And then I thought this was interesting. I hadn't thought of this, but they say the main reason there's this huge big inflation in America is because of gas prices. And the gas prices are specifically because Biden is hostile to Saudi Arabia. And he promised that as part of the campaign. Now, Trump totally cozied up to the Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, just like Putin, just like the guy in North Korea. Trump never met an autocrat he didn't like. He wanted to be just like them. And when they said, but he kills people, he said, well, we kill people too, like about Putin. It's not like I don't hold killing people against anybody. And besides, he told me he didn't kill that guy, so it must be true he didn't kill that guy. This is what Trump said. And Trump totally sold him a lot of weapons and was going to rehabilitate his bad image after he killed that journalist. And so Trump asked him to up the quantity of oil so it would lower the price in America to help make the economy boom. And he did that. It's a partnership. And Biden said he was going to make Mohammed bin Salman an outcast and totally give him the cold shoulder and not give him any respect or recognition to punish him. And that's what he did. And so Mohammed bin Salman is punishing him by cutting the oil production to make the price go up, with the intent of getting rid of the Democrats and putting the Republicans back in charge that are nicer to him. So it all kind of makes sense. And I hadn't thought of that. Anyway, then we're back to Kaitlyn with Uber. Well, I haven't heard about Uber in a long time.
Yeah, no, Uber's still out there and it's making terrible news as usual.
They're always doing something awful.
They're doing something awful, yes. So Al Jazeera has an article written by Malathi Nayak and Jackie Davalos. And basically what the article goes over is that Uber is, well, when you order an Uber, and let's say it takes you some time to get to the car, there's like a certain weight charge for making the driver wait. Well, I mean, that might seem fair on first glance because obviously, time is money and you're making people in the car wait. However, what if you have a disability and your mobility is a little limited? Well, that becomes an accessibility issue where people with mobility issues get charged more to ride Uber. So the administration of the United States, Joe Biden basically, is suing Uber to make modifications to the app to make it so that if that they get rid of that weight charge. And the thing is that Uber in particular is used by a lot of people with disabilities. If you can't drive, right, Uber is a good choice. So in particular, Uber should be held to a very high standards in terms of accessibility. And I hope they are in the future. Yeah.
That sounds like another bad thing Uber's done. Far from the worst thing they've done, but anyway, another bad thing they've done.
I mean, it's hard when you're a developer to think about accessibility when you're building the application, because even in little things like, well, we don't want the drivers to wait. A lot of people don't, or a lot of developers don't even realize, well, what about the people with mobility issues? You make a game like Simon Says or Red Light, Green Light, and you forget that, well, a lot of people are colorblind. So, you got to design the lights to be not only different colors, but also different shades. And, you just have to always keep accessibility in mind when you're developing software.
Let's not forget security.
Yeah, I mean, the field should be accessible to anyone.
Yeah. All right. And so Apple has been pressured into knocking it off.
Yes, they have been pressured to knock off that thing where if you break your phone and you got to go get it changed, Face ID stops working because of some stupid little chip. I am actually surprised that Apple's being forced to back off of that.
Well, there's a certain amount of bad press that has an effect. That's why I figure Microsoft is probably going to back off that edge monopoly stuff after it hits the press long enough. They'll say, this bad press is just not worth whatever money we thought we were making out of that.
Yeah, well, hopefully, because this I am pleasantly surprised that fighting off that whole monopoly of, you broke your phone, well, time to get a new one.
Well, how much money does Apple really make from those authorized repair centers being the only people that can fix a phone? That's what I would do. I'd say, how much money is it really going to cost us? Because still, I bet most iPhone people would rather go to an official authorized repair center and pay more anyway.
But that's not money that they're getting.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm glad they backed off.
Yeah, me too.
Because that was pretty ridiculous. All right. And Alan's got search engines getting things wrong. What a terrible idea.
Search engines getting things wrong about health questions. Some people may have figured this out already, but if you haven't already, you may not want to rely on Google and especially Yandex for answers to your health questions. Academic researchers in Germany and Russia have performed a study in which they looked at common queries pertaining to various health questions or symptoms, and then evaluated the accuracy of essentially the top results that people were seeing. And lo and behold, a lot of the results are highly inaccurate, particularly on Yandex, more so than Google, although Google's got its own problems. What they found was that a lot of the top results that are featured, the top 10 results that are featured in both search engines, are of the decidedly spammy variety and are inaccurate. Now, fortunately, most of these queries pertain to like, how do I address or how do I clean up acne? So we're not talking about, life-threatening misdiagnoses thanks to bad search engine results. Nevertheless, some of these questions that they did search for are very common and potentially life-altering. So it's not totally frivolous. Some of the questions, yes, are about how to get rid of dandruff and how to get rid of pimples.
Yeah.
But then some appear to be more serious infections.
I saw
that
one.
do need proper treatment.
I saw one a few weeks ago where they would Google like what to do when someone's having a seizure, and Google would pop up a summary saying restrain them and like force air into their mouth and jam their mouth open. And the actual article says, do not do all that. But their summary removes the do not and tells you to do that.
Yeah.
So I would.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there are some reasonably legitimate websites out there that provide generally sound medical advice, but then there are lots of people selling homeopathic remedies or snake oil remedies that most certainly should not be followed. And we've seen this medical misinformation, disinformation, of course, with COVID.
Oh yeah.
And that's the big one. That's really the biggest of all.
Yeah. I get my friends sending me all sorts of crackpot nonsense. It's discouraging.
Yeah. And we were talking about this before starting the podcast about 9/11 and how 9/11 trutherism has infected discourse about what happened on 9/11. And the same thing is true of COVID, certainly, too.
Yeah, I saw that this morning. There was a report showing that COVID is on the rise in a bunch of European countries, and they're talking about having lockdowns. And a bunch of people immediately started posting on Twitter saying, see, the vaccines don't work.
Yeah.
And when you look into it, they all say the problem is the people that didn't take the vaccine yet. And their idea of something to panic is less than what we have every day over here.
Yeah, right.
So it's people jump to a conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, people are still getting vaccinated, but the rate of vaccination is gone down significantly. So we're seeing very gradual improvement, but it's still, I think it's only about 60% in the US is fully vaccinated.
Yeah. And you need the booster shot. It really does fade after 6 months.
Yeah. Right.
Although that's because of the protocol. If you made a longer time between the shots, it would have lasted longer. That's what they did in Canada. But anyway, so I got a couple last ones here. I thought this was pretty amazing. Seattle has got such a crime problem. I know they got a big one in San Francisco that now they have special security guards just to walk you to your station if you work for the city, although they don't have anything for private people working in the private sector, but they don't think it's safe to like walk a few blocks to your car downtown, which is pretty appalling. But Seattle also had a big defund the police movement, and a whole bunch of the police quit. And apparently, even more than San Francisco, there's no apparent policing going on. I know in San Francisco, it seems like a law-free zone for the last couple of years. And apparently it's even worse in Seattle. And the last one I thought was awesome. These guys are just using a giant slingshot to send satellites up to space.
Oh, yeah.
It's bloody awesome. They have this round thing in vacuum. They just spin it around and then go, whee, off it goes. And it's a vacuum, and they have a little membrane on top. So it punches through the membrane, poof, and blast. They've shot something up to the upper stratosphere with only 20% of the power. So they say, this is the cool way. No pollution, less power, less waste. The way to send more satellites up. No rockets, no nothing. Sounds pretty awesome. Anyway.
It'll be interesting. I mean, this has actually been long time proposed as an easy way to get into space. This isn't actually a new concept.
Oh, Jules
Uh,
Verne. It was in, I saw they got to the moon in Jules Verne. You just got in a cannon and they blasted you to the moon.
Yeah, no. I mean, yeah. What you essentially create a rail gun,
Yeah.
in a vacuum, and then you. But the thing is, to scale it up, it gets very big. Like you have to, like, have the base of the rail gun at the bottom of Mount Everest, and then you have like the top at the top of Mount Everest, and
Yeah.
then it's not a straight line up there. It
Well,
kind of
apparently
curves
they-
around, and it has to go around in a circle to speed up, and then like in a nuclear accelerator, and then it goes up, and then it can shoot up really quickly. And I mean, it's definitely been proposed. The scale of getting something useful into space with it is pretty awesome. But if it can be done, hey.
Well, apparently it's working at least a prototype stage. So
Yeah.
that's pretty awesome.
Like I said, it's scaling up that's going to be the issue, not
Yeah.
not whether or not it's possible. The physics are there, but
Yeah. Well, they were kind of light on specifics of how high they got. They said, hey, it went pretty high. Like, they didn't apparently like really track it in detail, or else they don't feel like exactly telling you how high it went. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Well, that's it for this one. And we'll be back on Tuesday.